All right. Hello there. My name is Dan Skip Allen, and once again, I'm doing the 52 must-see movies and why they matter. On this episode, I'm going to be talking about the original 1933 King Kong, and my special guest is none other than Mr. Billy Pollihan. Introduce yourself, Billy.
Hello, everybody. My name is Billy Pollihan. I have been a guest on Dan's shows a number of times before. I've always had a good time, and I am very thrilled to be talking about one of my favorite films, King Kong. And I absolutely adore this movie. I love it more and more every single time I watch it, and I just can't wait to just geek out about it.
All right. So one of the things what we always do, Billy, is we always ask our guests on the show, or our co-hosts, I should say, why is a certain film essential? And we're going to get to that question. But first, what we're going to talk about is the cast and the director. The cast and I had the wrong notes in front of me. The cast and the director is very interesting. We have Robert Armstrong, Bruce Cabot, Fay Wray. Now, Fay Wray plays Ann Darrow. Bruce Cabot plays Jack Driscoll. And Robert Armstrong plays Carl Denham. Now, we also have a couple other characters. The cook, Charlie, the skipper that's in there. This is a film by actually kind of an adventure. He has made a multitude of like documentaries or docudramas, if you will, about climbing mountains in the Alps, or going to Africa and discovering tribes in Africa, or doing all this different. And that's Marion C. Cooper. Marion C. Cooper. You're going to hear a lot about it. Now, also, we have a gentleman that is well known in this genre, monster genre, in the stop motion animation. He does a lot of this kind of stuff back in the day, and he's well renowned for all his stop motion animation, specifically on King Kong, and that's Mr. Ray Harryhausen. And if you have not, he does a lot of talks. He'll go to a lot of conventions. He went to a lot of conventions. So there's a lot of stuff out there that you could go and get interviews, listen to interviews with Ray Harryhausen. He's a fantastic interview by different. He's on all kinds of special features on King Kong and other different Blu-rays. So you should be able to find some of the stuff where he's being interviewed. All right, Billy, what's your thought on this cast and these characters in this film?
Okay, so in order to, profile the cast, I have to first look at the time it was made and what the standards were back then, because this was in 1933 when generally the talkie, as it was called, or all that was generally new. So a lot of the actors were not trained for the speaking film. And a lot of it shows because especially the sporting cast would overact a lot. And I still think the leads they got, Bruce Cabot, Robert Armstrong, and Fay Wray, I still think they do a very good job. I mean, we get to know their characters. They have an arc. And then Fay Wray, she just screams her head off the entire time. But, I mean, it takes a lot out of you if you scream for that long. And
well, getting into screaming, we have the beginning of the movie where Robert Armstrong is ready to sail. They're going to sail the next morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he doesn't have his leading lady, who is going to go to this far off island called Skull Island. And he just kind of finds this lady in a bar or something like that. She thinks she's like, or she's at some like little grocer. She doesn't have money to feed herself, and she's she's like stealing stuff, and he kind of like, here, I'll take care of it, and convinces her to join him, and Darrow, and he gives this test. I want you to stand in front of the carrot. I want you to wear this clothes. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. And the one thing he asks her to do is he asks her if she can scream. And she gives the most unbelievable scream. That's the first time we hear the scream, is after, because you kind of get the meet the skipper, and you get to meet Charlie the cook and Jack Driscoll, kind of the second in command. But you really like, oh wow, this Fay Wray, this Ann Darrow character, I'm enamored with her.
Yeah. You better get used to that scream, because she does it a lot in the movie. But yeah, the thing I really liked was mostly Robert Armstrong, because I think Carl Denham is the most interesting character in this film, because you have to convince these people to go somewhere that's generally, it's a myth, really. And you got to convince all the cast, the crew, all the shipping people, you got to spend all this money, because it's a huge investment, to just go out to this. It could just be a wild goose chase. They could find nothing. But you got to be a hell of a salesman in order to convince all these people. And the way I think Robert Armstrong just plays him is very good. And like, he's very conniving, but he's just trying to make a movie. He's just trying to make a living. He's a businessman. That's what he does. And then we learn throughout the course of the film that his character is actually more despicable. But when you first meet him, he's just a guy just trying to get a movie done. And the fact that he convinced these people is just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of comparisons between him and Marion C. Cooper, the director of the film. He basically is like the Marion C. Cooper character in real life. So it's kind of interesting the parallels that we have between Marion C. Cooper's real life and this film. This is basically the film based on this guy's life in a lot of ways, because all right, so we get going, we sail to Skull Island, we get to show the skipper that they're going to an area in the West Indies that no one's ever been before, and so forth. And we got fog, and it's kind of tough, but they finally get to the island, and they amass their group of guys, and they're going down, and they're going to introduce themselves to the natives. And what they come across is the natives are singing and dancing, and they're having some kind of ritual. And you see in the background, there's a woman. There's a woman on like a pedestal. And from what we gather as viewers of and I believe our party that's landing on the island, is they're going to sacrifice this woman or something. And there's a giant door in a wall. So what would you think if you were these guys and you're like, uh-oh, what's going on here?
Well, I mean, if I was those guys, I'd be freaking out. I'd be like, I'm turning back, because nothing good. If you make a door that size, nothing good is going to come out of it. You're clearly hiding something, and it's something that's basically going to be out of this world, because there's no animal alive that is that big.
Yeah. And then the Aborigines, the natives, see our party. And the one thing they focus in on is what they consider, because the skipper and them start talking, and they consider her a golden god. Now, you hear this, the golden god. I mean, as Fay Wray, the Ann Darrow character, is a golden god. It kind of reminds you of C-3PO in Return of the Jedi in a way.
Oh yes, so they are the original Ewoks, is what I'm getting out of this. Yeah, no, I very much see. I'm never gonna look at Return of the Jedi the same way ever again now, Dan. And
similar, right?
it's very similar. I had not thought about that. And you're right. They call her a golden god, and they focus in on her a lot because, well, she's also the only woman, so she really stands out in the sea, generally white men. Yeah, I had a little problem with like how come somebody knows their language? I mean, if these are just people that we've never met before, but I let it go because that's just how films were back then. They didn't really care too much about plot. They were more about the experience.
So our crew goes back to the ship and so on and so forth. And we already know that some of the people, Jack Driscoll, isn't really happy to have a woman on board the ship, but she's got to be there because she's the star of the movie. And that's why Robert Armstrong's got her there. So everybody's kind of doing their own thing. And out of nowhere, the natives come to the ship and kidnap Anne Darrow and take her back to the ship, take her back to the island. Instead of giving the other girl up as a sacrifice, they want to give Anne Darrow up as a sacrifice to Kong. By this point, we know that there's a creature on the island called Kong. Now, of course, finally, I think Charlie the cook or somebody figures it out that she's gone. He's like, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. This is a huge stepping stone in the film because this gets the story really rolling here.
Yeah, they build up tension very well because they do what most good monster movies should do is that you don't see the monster right away. It's that you build up this monster. Oh, what could it be? What could it look like? Why would they kidnap this woman for, we assume it's this creature, and what creature would terrify them that much where they would give him sacrifice or would amaze them so much that they would sacrifice somebody. And Jack Driscoll, yeah, you're right. He doesn't like Anne at first because he has some very sexist dialogue. But again, it was the 30s, and he just, of course, gradually falls in love with her because that's how it was in all film, really. It wasn't just King Kong, but they really do build up the reveal of Kong very well, and they set up like this. They touch upon this culture and this island, and we just know that there's something a little off about this island, something fantastical. And up until this point in film history, most films were based on, let's say, like a literature, especially, or yeah, in a literature sense, like, you know, the Phantom of the Opera or the Hunchback of Notre Dame, especially American cinema. And it didn't really go into fantasy. So this was brand new.
All right, so obviously our crew has to rush back to the island, and they get there basically as Anne is being sacrificed. The doors are open, and you hear the trees rumbling, and you hear trees getting knocked down, and here comes Kong. He grabs a hold of Anne Darrow, and we hear that classic, that iconic from Anne Darrow, which we're going to hear a couple more times before this movie is over. And it's like one of the coolest scenes because you finally get to see the monster. But this isn't the only monster you get to see. Wow, are you kidding me? I mean, this sets our party adventure, and we get the Stegosaurus, Brachiosaurus. Eventually, we get a T-Rex, a pterodactyl, a giant snake. Now, characters are fighting Kong, and then a couple of them go up against party, or monsters, I should say, not characters, they're monsters. So So talk to me about what your thoughts about all these monsters and dinosaurs and things that you get to see in this movie. And this is all because of Ray Harryhausen. All this is Ray Harryhausen stop motion animation, which is, you know,
I'm going to have to correct you. It actually wasn't Ray Harryhausen. It was this guy named Willis O'Brien. But Ray Harryhausen, actually, he was inspired by this movie to start stop motion. I hate to be that guy, but
no,
yeah.
I'm glad you said that because I'm looking through the credits and it says Ray Harryhausen. All right.
Yeah, no, but Ray Harryhausen was very much he was sort of like Willis O'Brien's protege. He worked on the team.
Oh, okay.
But the main guy was this man named Willis O'Brien. And yeah, stop motion, if you know anything about stop motion, you cannot believe how difficult it is just to animate a minute. That's hard. That's like, that could take all day. For a couple of seconds, it could take all day to animate. And the fact that they did this without any modern technology, they did it all by hand. And yeah, there's something really just appealing about stop motion, the way that it all comes together. It's fake, but you can't help but admire the craftsmanship and just the design of the jungle, knowing that all that is handmade. It's really amazing. And I just look into it and I'm like, oh my God. And I noticed little details. And also how they fight the monsters. They had to come up with these entire new techniques. Like there would be a screen behind the actors while the actors performed, or sometimes they would silhouette the actors in the back while they animate around them, or sometimes they would just combine the footage. And yeah, we get a giant ape, which is a giant 50-foot ape, which is unbelievable. And yeah, dinosaurs exist. And everyone just does a great job of being like, oh my God, holy shit, there are dinosaurs on this island. The thing I appreciate the most is that Kong is acting like an animal, because there's a scene where I think he's looking for Driscoll and he just puts his hand through this thing and he just stabs it, and then he's just like, why? And then like he has this blank expression on his face, which most animals have. That's why they're so unpredictable, because you don't know what they're thinking. And I love that they did that with Kong. And they really show his strength, because I mean, he fights a T-Rex and he does that awesome opening the jaw move, all for just this human. And why, we don't know. He just, apparently Anne Darrow is just the Helen of Troy of anything. Everybody just falls in love with her and will fight to the death for her.
Yeah, that's and you're absolutely right. He just, something about her. He just loves his blonde locks, this white pearl-like skin, or whatever, however you want to describe. So he basically takes her to his lair on the top of this cave, on this top of this mountains, and Jack Driscoll follows him after he basically tears through their party. A couple different encounters with our party. He basically knocks a bunch of them off a tree bridge and kills them. And there's not that many of our people left, besides like Robert Armstrong, a couple people. They have to run back to the boat and get reinforcements, because Kong's basically went through most of our. Jack has found a way to kind of hide and get there. And while Kong is fighting a pterodactyl, they find a way to escape and get all the way down this rope into this river, and the river basically drains almost down to where they need to go to get back to the boat. And of course, Kong's coming after him. And Robert has this brilliant brain idea. Well, we need Kong. We need Kong because he's going to be the focus of our movie. So we need to capture Kong somehow. So, I mean, you're like, they're escaping in what is Robert Armstrong. Carl Denham wants to keep I mean, what a ridiculous plan that is, right?
Yeah, and the reason why he does it is very simple, because he wants to make money. I mean, why spend all this money and go to this island and have all these people killed all for nothing? It would just be an entire waste of time. So he's like, you know what? Um, Screw you, giant monkey. I'm going to take you back with me, and I'm going to make more money than I could have possibly imagined in New York City, because everything premiered in New York City back then, or it was as big as LA, if not bigger. And yeah, I mean, I don't know why anybody else went along with it, but somehow they did. And yeah, they chuck a couple grenades at it, and somehow it just knocks him out. And I can't even imagine the thought of trying to drag that giant ape onto a smaller boat all the way to New York City. And we don't know where this island is at. They never specify. So it's probably thousands of miles, and it doesn't wake up, which is okay, because yeah, Kong is the eighth wonder of the world. Like, Carl Denham is really hyping this up, and
Yeah.
everybody just sort of looks at him like he's really crazy, but we really don't have a choice.
Back to New York, we have this show. We end up with Jack Driscoll and Ann Darrow basically in tuxes and dresses and stuff, and they're gonna eighth wonder of the world show to New York City, a whole crowd of people. And Kong is strapped to this giant, like big giant like thing. He can't get out. He's chained and whatnot. And of course, he sees Ann Darrow, played by Fay Wray once again, and he goes, no pun intended, ape
shit.
Ape shit. He goes ape shit. And then that's where we lead to one of the most iconic scenes in movie history, really. I mean, he kind of they Jack Driscoll and get away, but he climbs this building and he goes in through the window, reaches through the window, and grabs Anne out of his hotel room or room she was in. And then that's where the movie really gets the most climactic scene in movie history. He climbs and climbs and climbs up the Empire State Building, and he gets to the top of the Empire State with police trying to chase him and whatnot. They can't get him, and he's got Ann Darrow in his hands. And one of the policemen or so, why don't we use airplanes? What a brilliant idea. Airplanes. What a great idea. So we get the airplanes, and you know what happens with the airplanes. So give me some of your thoughts on this whole scene and the end of the movie. And then I got one more thing I want to talk about at the end of the movie before we're all done this episode.
Yeah, let's talk about that third act. So it's basically Carl Denham has really gone all out, and I'll give him this. He's an incredible showman. Like, he's like, okay, guys, we got this thing that you don't know what it is, but you're really going to like it. But then Jack Driscoll, like, he's like, are you sure this thing is contained? I mean, it's a giant ape. And Carl Denham, of course, the showman that he is, he really hypes it up. And he's very charismatic. And then we see Kong he basically just wants to make Kong a zoo animal. Just put him up on display, make lots of money off of it, and just be like, hey, look at this giant 50-foot monster that we captured and can't do anything. Basically looking like Jesus Christ with the restraints and everything. And then, of course, he sees Anne, and that gives him the will and the adrenaline to just boom, boom, out over those cuffs. And then, yeah, he just runs a rampage in the city. I'm pretty he picks up the wrong woman at first, because in all the confusion, Anne gets lost, and so he just picks up a woman, and then he just drops her, and he kills her, and you see it too, which is very shocking. And then yeah, somehow he finds Anne's apartment. There's a giant hand that just grabs her, and it slowly pulls away. And everyone's just freaking out because Kong is causing so much collateral damage that he's probably killed hundreds of people at this point. But then, yeah, you're right. He goes up the Empire State Building, and someone's like, hey, let's use planes. But then, oddly enough, it gets really touching because over the course of this movie, you see Kong and Darrow bond and really form not really a love, but more like a friendship, more of like Kong. I always felt that Kong saw her as a pet and eventually fell in love with her, which was very weird. But it's the classic, not to point at your poster, but yeah, pointing at your poster, Beauty and Beast tale that has stood the test of time. And yeah, you're right. It's one of the most iconic, well shot, just everything about it is wonderful, and it's iconic for a reason. One of the best finales ever. And then it closes off like Carl Denham. They're all celebrating over Kong's dead body, and they're just like, oh, it was the planes that took him down. And then Carl's just goes, no, it was Beauty killed the Beast. And it's very ominous the way he says it. And then the film ends.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I wanted to kind of go through the ending of the thing where Carl Denham says, "'Twas Beauty killed the Beast." He just was so enamored with Anne Darrow, and it really, you kind of felt sorry for Kong. You really did feel sorry for Kong because you're like, all he wanted was a woman or a girlfriend or whatever, and the beauty of Anne Farrow was something that really was attractive to his eyes, and that's all. I mean, I don't think he wanted to hurt anybody. He just wanted a woman, and of course, because he's a beast and he's 50 foot tall, you're not going to have a normal woman, and people aren't going to go for it. They don't understand you. They don't understand. And that's why the moral of the story is this: leave the animals in their natural habitat. Don't go trying to bite off more than you can chew and get involved in things like that, because this is what can happen, And it was a sad. King Kong is kind of a sad story in a lot of ways. It's about ambition, really. It's about like anything today in today's society. How did anything get the way it is? Buildings get the way it is. How did, sports venues get the way they are, the Eiffel Tower or whatever? It's because of ambition. You just have to keep having bigger and big and better. And that's what the Carl Denham character was doing. He wanted to show, the biggest animal, go here and go on this expedition and do this and that's the Marion C. Cooper story. Basically, he wanted to show the biggest lions and the tigers and climb the biggest mountains and see the biggest creatures and the most amazing feats of man, and it's not always the right thing to do. You know what I mean?
No, it shows there's a Greek myth about Icarus, and it's a thing about hubris, where he flew too close to the sun and then fell. They reached too high. Ambition and greed won out, because it's not just Carl Denham, although he is the most obvious one for this. Anne Darrow is also a bit ambitious because she sees this as her big chance. This is a big opportunity for her to get some work and be a legit actress. And then just Kong is just an animal. That's the big thing. He's just an animal, and you take him out of his natural habitat, of course he's going to be confused. And of course he didn't mean to hurt anybody. He was looking for the thing that he wanted, and what he wanted was Anne. And really, for a film in 1933 to have this much character depth and to have some groundbreaking special effects that had never been done before. They had to invent all of this stuff. And a lot of it is still a mystery because obviously back then they didn't care about DVD bonus features or any of that stuff because they didn't have it. And if you didn't see it, you didn't see it. There was no home video. And it was more about the art than it was for the money. And that, to me, is just perfect cinema. And every time I watch it, I always find something new. Just anything, really. And whether it's the special effects or certain acting choices or certain story points, even. And I saw this when I was 8 years old on Turner Classic Movies, and I was never the same.
And the reason why we're doing this is right here. The 52 Must-See Movies and Why They Matter by Robert Osborne, The Essentials. This is the book that we're going off of to do these videos. And it says TCM, Turner Classic Movies, right there. And so it all goes around in a circle, Billy. But I just want to say thank you, Billy, for being on this episode of the 52 Must-See Movies and Why They Matter. Where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at bbusterbill. All the B's are capital. But I can't speak today, like Porky Pig. You can find me on Facebook, Billy Pollihan, just my name. You can find me on Instagram, BlockbusterBill, all lowercase letters this time. And yeah, just hit me up, and you can find me around the Screen Junkies page. I'm a massive fan of theirs, or the Schmoes page. And yeah, I'd love to talk and meet new people. And you can always find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, and Twitter, or at From the Fourth Row. I also do a podcast called The Best Damn Movie Show with my co-host Vinny LaSpada. We were live at what's called Spooky Empire here where we live. So we have some live event footage from that. Then he had a bunch of interviews all weekend long. Also, I do another show on the Best Damn Movie Show YouTube channel called The Top 5 Weekly, where usually it's myself and Andrew and Stephen Billings and Andrew Cabral. And this week, I believe we're going to be doing our top 5 indie directors because of Ponsolt did. He was the director of The Circle. So we're going to do our top 5 indie directors in a film that really got us to love that director. These are small directors. They're not going to be big name directors, but they're ones that are coming along here. So for Billy and myself, good night.